The ongoing conflict in Ukraine has been marked by a series of brutal battles as Ukrainian forces have faced off against Russian-backed separatists in the eastern regions of the country. The conflict has also involved the deployment of Russian troops and military equipment in violation of international law. One of the most significant aspects of the conflict has been the decimation of Russia's elite fighting forces, particularly the 331st Guards Parachute Regiment, which was known for its heroic combat in the Soviet-Afghanistan War. The regiment has suffered heavy losses in Ukraine, with some estimates suggesting that up to 70% of its soldiers have been killed or injured in less than a year of fighting. So, what led to the defeat of Russia's best troops in Ukraine? An examination of the tactics and strategies employed by Ukrainian forces provides some key insights into this question. One of the most important factors in Ukraine's success has been its use of asymmetrical warfare tactics, which have allowed it to effectively counter Russia's conventional military capabilities. Asymmetrical warfare is a strategy in which a weaker military force uses unconventional tactics and weapons to offset the strengths of a stronger adversary. In the case of Ukraine, this has meant relying on a combination of guerrilla warfare, sabotage, and intelligence operations, as well as the use of small, highly mobile units to launch surprise attacks against Russian troops and equipment. By doing so, Ukrainian forces have been able to inflict significant damage on Russian military assets while minimizing their own losses. Another key strategy employed by Ukraine has been the use of drones, which have proven to be a highly effective tool in gathering intelligence and conducting targeted strikes against Russian positions. Ukraine has invested heavily in developing its drone capabilities, with a focus on producing affordable, easy-to-operate systems that can be deployed quickly and without the need for extensive training. In addition, Ukraine has also employed a range of psychological tactics to undermine the morale of Russian troops, including propaganda campaigns aimed at highlighting the cost of the conflict and the suffering of local populations. These efforts have helped to create a sense of disillusionment among Russian soldiers, many of whom have become increasingly demoralized and disenchanted with the war. Perhaps one of the most significant factors in Ukraine's success, however, has been its ability to leverage international support and cooperation. The conflict in Ukraine has attracted widespread attention from the international community, with many countries and organizations providing various forms of assistance to the Ukrainian government and military. This support has included the provision of military equipment, intelligence sharing, and training, as well as economic and diplomatic pressure on Russia to end its involvement in the conflict. Such cooperation has been critical in allowing Ukraine to maintain its military capabilities and to effectively counter Russian aggression. Overall, the tactics and strategies employed by Ukrainian forces have been instrumental in achieving success against Russia's best troops in Ukraine. By relying on asymmetrical warfare tactics, the use of drones, psychological operations, and international cooperation, Ukraine has been able to offset Russia's conventional military strengths and inflict significant damage on its military assets. As the conflict continues, it remains to be seen whether Ukraine will be able to build on its successes and ultimately achieve a resolution to the conflict. However, the country's experiences provide a valuable lesson in the power of asymmetrical warfare and the importance of leveraging international support in confronting aggression from larger, more powerful adversaries. The use of anti-tank guided missiles, ATGMs, has been particularly effective in countering Russian armored vehicles. Ukraine has developed its own domestic ATGMs, such as the Skiff and the Stugna, which have been used with great success against Russian tanks and armored personnel carriers. In addition, Ukraine has also acquired foreign-made ATGMs, such as the American-made Javelin missile system, which has proven to be highly effective in destroying Russian tanks. The use of electronic warfare, EW, systems has been critical in disrupting Russian communications and radar systems. Ukrainian forces have deployed EW systems to jam Russian radio frequencies, interfere with radar signals, and disrupt command and control systems. By doing so, they have been able to disrupt Russian operations and create confusion and disarray among Russian troops. Ukraine has also made significant improvements to its air defense capabilities, which have allowed it to counter Russian air attacks. Ukraine has acquired modern air defense systems, such as the American-made ANTPQ-36 Firefinder radar system and the Israeli-made Iron Dome missile defense system. These systems have been used to detect and intercept Russian artillery shells and missiles, as well as to counter Russian air attacks. Ukrainian forces have also made extensive use of social media and other digital tools to gather intelligence and coordinate their operations. Ukrainian soldiers have been known to use social media platforms such as Facebook and Instagram to gather information about Russian troop movements and to coordinate their attacks. In addition, Ukrainian hackers have reportedly targeted Russian military networks, stealing sensitive information and disrupting Russian operations. Finally, Ukraine has also benefited from the support of volunteer battalions and other non-state actors, which have provided additional manpower and resources to its military efforts. These groups have been instrumental in providing frontline support and in carrying out unconventional operations against Russian forces. Overall, the success of Ukraine's tactics and strategies in countering Russian aggression in Ukraine demonstrates the importance of innovation, flexibility, and international cooperation in modern warfare. By leveraging a range of asymmetrical tactics and technologies, as well as international support and cooperation, Ukraine has been able to effectively confront a much larger and more powerful adversary. Ukraine is focused on establishing a strong defensive posture, particularly along its eastern border with Russia. By creating fortified positions and trench lines, as well as deploying anti-tank obstacles and minefields, Ukrainian forces have been able to slow down and deter Russian advances. This has forced Russian troops to engage in costly and time-consuming siege operations, which have undermined their ability to conduct offensive operations elsewhere. Ukraine has also pursued a strategy of attrition, seeking to wear down Russian forces through a prolonged and sustained campaign of guerrilla warfare. Ukrainian forces have engaged in hit-and-run tactics, ambushes, and sabotage operations against Russian supply lines and rear echelon units. By doing so, they have been able to inflict significant casualties on Russian troops and disrupt their operations. In addition, Ukraine has sought to build up its military capabilities through modernization and reform. In recent years, Ukraine has invested heavily in upgrading its military equipment and technology, as well as improving the professionalism and training of its soldiers. This has helped to build a more effective and resilient military force, which has been better able to withstand Russian aggression. Ukraine has also sought to mobilize international support and cooperation in its efforts to counter Russian aggression. Ukraine has worked closely with NATO and other Western countries to build up its military capabilities and to develop a coordinated strategy for countering Russian aggression. In addition, Ukraine has sought to leverage international sanctions and other economic measures to put pressure on Russia and limit its ability to wage war in Ukraine. Finally, Ukraine has sought to build a national unity and resilience in the face of Russian aggression. The conflict in Ukraine has brought together people from across the country, regardless of their political or ethnic background, in a shared struggle against Russian aggression. By fostering a sense of national identity and shared purpose, Ukraine has been able to build a strong and resilient society, which has been better able to withstand the challenges of war. Ukraine has developed a strong network of human intelligence, HUMINT sources, which has allowed it to gather critical information about Russian troop movements and deployments. Ukrainian intelligence agencies have recruited agents and sources within Russian-occupied territories, as well as within the Russian military and security services. This has enabled them to gain valuable insights into Russian plans and operations, and to disrupt their activities through targeted sabotage and other actions. Ukraine has also invested heavily in developing its signal intelligence (SIGINT) capabilities, particularly in the areas of cyber intelligence and electronic surveillance. Ukrainian intelligence agencies have deployed advanced cyber tools and techniques to penetrate Russian military and government networks, and to collect sensitive information about Russian operations. In addition, Ukraine has also deployed advanced surveillance systems, such as unmanned aerial vehicles (UAVs), to gather real-time intelligence about Russian troop movements and deployments. Ukraine has also relied on open-source intelligence (OSINT) to gather information about Russian military capabilities and operations. Ukrainian soldiers and civilians have used social media and other online platforms to share information and images about Russian military equipment, tactics, and operations. This has allowed Ukrainian intelligence agencies to build a comprehensive picture of Russian military capabilities and intentions, and to develop effective countermeasures. Ukraine has also worked closely with Western intelligence agencies and partners to gather intelligence and share information about Russian activities. Ukrainian intelligence agencies have collaborated with NATO and other Western countries to share intelligence about Russian troop deployments, equipment, and tactics. This has allowed them to build a more complete and accurate picture of Russian military capabilities and intentions, and to develop effective countermeasures. Finally, Ukraine has made significant investments in training and equipping its intelligence personnel in order to build a professional and effective intelligence service. Ukrainian intelligence agencies have adopted best practices and standards from Western intelligence services and have developed rigorous training programs for their personnel. This has helped to build a capable and effective intelligence service, which has played a critical role in countering Russian aggression in Ukraine. Overall, the success of Ukraine's intelligence efforts in countering Russian aggression in Ukraine demonstrates the importance of innovation, collaboration, and professionalization in intelligence gathering and analysis. By leveraging a range of technical and human intelligence tools and techniques, as well as international partnerships and cooperations, Ukraine has been able to effectively gather and analyze intelligence about Russian military activities and to develop effective countermeasures. The conflict in Ukraine has strained Russia's relations with the West and has led to the imposition of a range of economic and diplomatic sanctions on Russia. These sanctions have had a significant impact on the Russian economy, including its energy and financial sectors. In addition, the conflict has contributed to deterioration in global security, as tensions between Russia and the West have increased. The conflict in Ukraine has also had significant human costs, particularly for the civilians caught in the middle of the conflict. Civilians have been subjected to indiscriminate shelling and bombing, as well as to other forms of violence and intimidation. In addition, civilians living in separatist-controlled territories have faced significant restrictions on their freedom of movement and expression, as well as on their access to basic goods and services. The conflict in Ukraine has also highlighted the dangers of hybrid warfare, which combines conventional military tactics with unconventional methods, such as disinformation campaigns, cyber attacks, and the use of proxy forces. The conflict in Ukraine has demonstrated that hybrid warfare can be a highly effective means of achieving strategic objectives, particularly for smaller and weaker states. At the same time, it has also highlighted the need for a coordinated and comprehensive response to hybrid threats, involving both military and non-military tools and strategies. Finally, the conflict in Ukraine has underscored the importance of supporting democratic and independent states in the face of aggression and coercion. Ukraine has faced significant challenges in its efforts to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity, but it has also demonstrated remarkable resilience and determination in the face of these challenges. The international community must continue to support Ukraine in its efforts to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity, and to build a more prosperous and democratic future for its people. Overall, the strategic and human costs of Putin's ambitions in Ukraine have been significant, both for Ukraine and for the broader international community. The conflict has demonstrated the dangers of aggressive and expansionist behavior, as well as the importance of a coordinated and comprehensive response to hybrid threats. At the same time, it has also highlighted the resilience and determination of those who seek to defend their sovereignty and territorial integrity, even in the face of significant challenges and adversity. Russia's incursion into Ukraine has had a significant cost, not just for Ukraine, but for Russia as well. The conflict has resulted in heavy losses for Russia, including the loss of some of its best troops. Russia's use of force in Ukraine began in 2014, when it annexed Crimea and supported separatist rebels in eastern Ukraine. The conflict has since escalated into a full-scale war, with Russia providing military support to separatist fighters and engaging in direct military intervention in eastern Ukraine. One of the most significant losses for Russia has been the loss of its best troops. The 331st Guards Parachute Regiment, known for its heroic combat in the Soviet-Afghanistan War, was one of Russia's elite fighting forces. However, it was decimated by the Ukrainian military in the ongoing conflict in less than a year. The loss of the 331st Guards Parachute Regiment was a significant blow to Russia's military capabilities, as it was one of the most experienced and highly trained units in the Russian military. Its defeat in Ukraine highlights the challenges that Russia has faced in adapting to modern warfare, particularly the challenges posed by hybrid warfare, which combines conventional military tactics with unconventional methods, such as disinformation campaigns and the use of proxy forces. In addition to the loss of its best troops, Russia has also suffered significant casualties in the conflict. The conflict has also resulted in significant economic losses for Russia, as it has faced sanctions from the West and has had to divert resources to the conflict in Ukraine. The conflict in Ukraine has also had wider geopolitical consequences, as it has strained Russia's relations with the West and has contributed to deterioration in global security. The conflict has highlighted the dangers of aggressive expansionism and the need for a coordinated and comprehensive response to hybrid threats. Overall, the cost of Russia's expansionism in Ukraine has been significant for Russia. The loss of its best troops and the significant casualties it has suffered in the conflict highlight the challenges that Russia faces in adapting to modern warfare. The conflict has also resulted in significant economic and geopolitical consequences and has had a devastating impact on the civilians caught in the middle of the conflict. China's support of Russia in its conflict with Ukraine has been a double-edged sword for Putin. While China's diplomatic and economic support has been helpful for Russia in some ways, its reluctance to provide military assistance has left Putin in a vulnerable position. China has been a vocal supporter of Russia's actions in Ukraine and has used its position on the UN Security Council to block efforts to impose sanctions on Russia. China has also deepened economic ties with Russia, particularly through the Belt and Road Initiative, which has led to increased trade and investment between the two countries. However, China's support has been limited in some key areas. China has been hesitant to provide military assistance to Russia and has refrained from taking a more active role in the conflict. This has left Putin in a difficult position, as he has had to rely primarily on his own military capabilities to continue the conflict in Ukraine. China's reluctance to provide military assistance is due in part to its own strategic interests. China has been focused on its own territorial disputes, particularly in the South China Sea, and has been hesitant to get involved in conflicts outside of its immediate neighborhood. China has also been cautious about getting involved in conflicts that could damage its relationship with the West, particularly the United States. The lack of military assistance from China has left Russia in a vulnerable position in its conflict with Ukraine. Russia has faced significant military setbacks in the conflict, particularly in the early stages of the conflict when its troops were ill-prepared and poorly equipped for the hybrid warfare tactics used by the Ukrainian military. Russia's inability to secure significant military victories in Ukraine has put Putin in a difficult position domestically, as he has faced criticism from both the military establishment and the general public for his handling of the conflict. Putin's popularity has also suffered as a result of the conflict, particularly as the economic costs of the conflict have mounted and public discontent has grown. In addition to military setbacks, Russia has also faced significant economic costs as a result of the conflict. The imposition of Western sanctions has led to significant restrictions on Russia's ability to access international capital markets, and has led to a decline in foreign investment. The conflict has also had a negative impact on Russia's trade relations with Europe, which has been a key market for Russian exports. Overall, China's backdoor help to Russia in the conflict with Ukraine has had both positive and negative consequences for Putin. While China's diplomatic and economic support has been helpful in some ways, its reluctance to provide military assistance has left Russia in a vulnerable position in the conflict. The lack of military victories and the significant economic costs of the conflict have put Putin in a difficult position domestically and have led to a decline in his popularity.